Welcome. This is the Ag Engineering Podcast, where we talk tools, tips, and techniques to improve the sustainability of your farm. I am your host, Andy Chamberlain from the University of Vermont Extension, and this podcast is supported by Northeast SARE, providing grants and education to advance innovation in sustainable agriculture. We're trying to improve the industry by chatting with farmers and getting their input on tools, tips, or techniques that have changed the way they farm for good. Many of these practices affect multiple areas of the farm. Whether it be environmentally, emotionally, physically, or financially, we share the knowledge to promote sustainable agriculture, lifestyle, and business. Thanks for having a listen. Now, let's get started. Today's episode comes from southwestern Pennsylvania, where we meet with a vendor, importer, and manufacturer of vegetable farm equipment called Market Farm Implement. Dave started out a farmer and transitioned into selling vegetable equipment when he found out that his local dealer didn't offer what he needed. From seeders and transplanters, cultivators, or harvesters, he can tell you the ins and outs of what works well or what doesn't. Now, during this visit, I snapped both photos and videos. You can see these displayed in the show notes at agengpodcast.com or visit the UVM Extension Ag Engineering YouTube channel. This episode explains the details about the precision pneumatic vegetable planter from MaterMac. With proper setup, these can be built to plant a variety of vegetables, including many rows or various spacing with the right seed disc, which, as you'll hear, there are a lot of options available.
Now, MaterMac has a small planter. This is their big planter. Then they have a small unit. I did a 9-row last summer. So 3 rows under the tractor, 3 rows on this side, and 3 rows on this side. And he was doing 80 acres of onions in Illinois.
So that's an overall smaller seed disc, smaller hopper.
This is an old unit here.
Oh, yeah.
That we made a display stand. Now they've gone to a wider chassis. Yeah, that's kind of an older unit. It doesn't have the stainless press wheels on it. I had 3 units in this crate. That's the new seed hopper, the yellow one. Same size hopper as on the walk behind. And I had a guy in New Jersey. He has a 5-row. He wanted to make it a 7. He's going to move them in close. Those will get down to 9 inches apart. And he's doing spinach. And I think his 5 rows were like 12 or 15. He wanted to add 2 more rows and tighten everything in, so I sent him 2 a couple months ago. Press wheel chassis that the planter mounts into. So there's a stainless steel front and rear wheel, because that planter is really designed for small seed. And with small seed, you're planting like a 1/4 inch deep. You want really good seed to soil contact, so you just steamroller it in, basically. One way of putting it, I guess. Also, the one thing you can do on the small planter, you can do multi-line. And so, standard, you have a shoe like this. There's a guy in California has a 15-row, so my brother was wondering how many of these shoes, and I have. So, he's doing a lot of acreage with a 15-row planter. So, you're going to wear this shoe out. Yep. So that's on the small planter. That's probably going to be your main replacement part. And to some extent, now that I think of that, the big planter has double disc openers. And over time, so I do ship both for the fertilizer coulters and the seed coulters. That is one thing, but generally it has to be a guy that has like a 4 or 6 row.
Yeah.
Most of I have planters that I built in 1998, the first year, that they never put a part on it. What people will do is, now I have a planter I could do lettuce or radishes, so they buy seed discs.
Yeah. And
I UPS seed discs. So, the row unit comes standard with a single line shoe. But the small planter, you can do this.
Oh, yeah.
You can do double line or triple line. So this would be a carrot setup. Carrot growers once they're on any kind of scale, like 100 acres plus, they like 1.5-inch lines per row unit. Okay, or you can do a double line. There's ways to assemble different bushings and what have you.
Space them out right.
So onion guys tend to like 2 lines 4 inches apart for onions. And we get into a little bit of that. And then you have a special, if you're going to do triple line, I don't keep a lot of these seed discs around because we don't do a lot of it. So this will have 3 circles.
Oh yeah.
And then there's a way it divides out to each of those furrows. That's a pretty small hole because this is 72 holes, 0.8 millimeter, which, for carrots you use a small hole.
So that setup would go on the big planter?
No, only on the small planter.
Okay, so use a small planter, but then gang them up.
Yeah, you might have planters 12 inches apart or closer.
Yeah.
But each one is doing 3 lines.
Right.
So you'd have 4 units and it'd be 12 lines.
Do discs for like corn or pumpkins fit in the smaller?
Oh, it's all the same metering unit.
Okay.
The only difference is on the small planter, they capture some of the exhaust from the fan instead of just letting it exhaust out in the atmosphere. They put some tubing there and capture that exhaust. And what they do, 2 things. Small seeds, if they're round like that cabbage, they're very flowable.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take a lettuce seed, it's not very flowable. It'll kind of bunch up. And so they take a little air down in the bottom there to help stir and agitate.
Gotcha.
The other thing that could happen, even though you have a very small hole for lettuce, every now and then that end of the lettuce seed is a needle and it could actually get sucked into the hole. So now when you get around to vacuum cutoff, it's stuck. They take a little air from the backside and blow it.
Gotcha.
So you don't get a skip.
Yeah.
That's not that important to someone that's doing a 1/4 acre or an 1/8 or a couple of 100-foot beds succession planting. But you get someone that's doing hundreds of acres of onions or whatever. Then it's important to them to have that kind of precision and accuracy and. So these are all the vacuum seed discs.
Wow.
So, everything from the smallest holes. The biggest one is 6.5 millimeter. That would be for lima beans, which we don't do much with. There's 2 sticking together there. So that's a 6.5 millimeter hole.
That's a big hole. I don't know of anybody growing lima beans.
Yeah. I send them out every now and then, but not often. And we have it in a 24-hole version and a 48-hole version. And that just depends on the spacings, And so when you get into, say, like a 4.5 millimeter, I have 2 holes. So if some guy says, I want to put, I don't know why they do it, but so I've got a hole here and a hole there. They want to put a pumpkin seed every 8 feet.
Uh-huh.
They can do it. So then in 4.5 millimeter diameter, I have 2 hole, 4 hole, 6 hole, 9 hole, 12 hole, 18, 24, 36, 48, 72 is the biggest you can do. You can't do 96 because the holes are starting to get so close. There's no hardly any metal in between them.
Uh-huh.
You start to split the disc into 2 pieces. So you have to sort of, and then and so then you go down to from 4.5, you go down to 3.5, 2.5, 2, 1.5, 1.0, 1.0, 1.0, down to 0.8, and then down to 0.6 and 0.5, and all the different 24, 30, when you get into some of the smaller ones, 144 hole, then 180 hole, 192. After 192, it goes up to 240 is the most in the small holes.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you learned something today or plan to make a change on your farm, let me know. I'd love to receive any feedback you have. Just click the link in the description to submit the form. It will help the future of this podcast to be a resource that is helpful for you. And while you're at it, I hope you go ahead and subscribe, share this with a friend, or leave a comment. And if you want more information, check out the show notes on our website at agengpodcast.com. That's agengpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a great day.
The proceeding has been a production of University of Vermont Extension. For more information on Extension, log on to www.uvm.edu/extension.